And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. This is your host, Rico. And today we are talking about the Washington Commanders and their loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll also be talking about this upcoming game with the Philadelphia Eagles, as it's going to be a quick turnaround. And so just going and looking back at this Pittsburgh Steelers loss and just kind of giving my final thoughts on this one, I think that there were four plays that I think the Washington Commanders would love to have back in this game. I'm sure that there's probably more out there, but there's four that really stand out to me. And make no mistake about it, it's not, I don't think any one of these four plays necessarily cost the Washington Commanders the entire game, because in a football game or a game in general, there's a lot of different things that you need to go right in order to win the game. But starting with play number one, I think the Zacchaeus punt fumble, the muff fumble, I think that was tough because the Pittsburgh Steelers went on to score. I think that was definitely a play that the Commanders wish they could have got back there. Number two, I think, is just where St. Juste, he bites on that in route suddenly as Mike Williams goes over the top for that long pass. That definitely hurt us. That essentially was the game-winning touchdown. So I think that's play number two. Play number three for me, and I don't know if many people are talking about it, but when we recovered that fumble, right, when the Pittsburgh Steelers were going down before they threw that touchdown pass to Mike Williams and we generated the turnover, this would have been the time that you would hope that the offense just could have stayed on the field, perhaps flipped the field and made it a longer field for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get down. And then also, too, maybe there's a chance that we perhaps could run the clock out. But, that is really your offense just taking it to another level against an elite defense like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They obviously were able to force the punt, and then we kick it back over to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's where Russell Wilson throws that touchdown pass to Mike Williams. And so I think that's play number three. And then the last play with Johnny Newton, I think that was still going to be tough for the Washington Commanders, with no timeouts left. I think that they absolutely could have gotten themselves in the field goal range. I'm not saying that they would have had to go get a touchdown. I mean, field goal range. But depending on what would have happened with the punt, because they were already in some pretty good field position. And so with a punt, even with a touchback, you're still starting from your own 20. And I mean, yes, you're just trying to get a field goal, but that's still going to be tough against a tough defense. And so I think that was probably play number four, because we just don't know what could have happened out there with that. Like if we would have got the ball in our hands, yes, I would have liked to have seen that versus them be able to go ahead and run out the clock and essentially draw us offside. So I think that those were the four plays where I think the Washington Commanders wish they could have really gotten those back. And so then when we look at the stat sheets, just once more, I think that a key takeaway here is just what they were able to do as far as taking away our running game. Because you look at the fact that we had 60 yards to their 140 yards. And I talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers and just how good they were running the football coming in. I certainly think that is something that probably helps them with the play fakes and all those things like that. That's something that this Pittsburgh Steelers team really relies on, is really getting you into some play action stuff. And it starts with being able to move people up front in the run game. And so give them credit for doing that. For us, I think that is a key for us. We need to run the football. I've said this before, that running the football for the Washington Commanders is a must. All right. Because Jaden Daniels, we know he's dynamic. He can do a lot of special things, but I think it starts up front with establishing that identity and really pounding on some teams. And then that way we're able to stretch that defense, that opposing defense. And so I think that is a key takeaway from this game. Next up, with the 3 sacks, I think that even though Jaden Daniels shows that he can hold his own against an elite defense yet again, because he did that against the Chicago Bears, and then I think he holds his own against the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're right there. You just see that they were able to really put a little bit more pressure on Jaden Daniels and make it tough for him. Obviously, he's going to have to go out there and really make some decisions probably a bit more quicker than he wants to. But they did a great job as far as getting home with sacks. And, Preston Smith, who used to play for Washington, gets a sack. So he's one of those 3 sacks. And so, I think that is probably another key takeaway here. But other than that, I think that this is a game that the Washington Commanders are going to learn from. I think this is the type of game that you need. I talked about this yesterday when I said, the Chiefs, they find ways to win these games. And I think that the Washington Commanders are really trending towards being one of those teams. And I'm not saying that they're, I'd love to see them win a Super Bowl again. But I'm just saying right now, they're a team that they're starting to do what winning teams usually do in this league. And that's just find ways to get games like this. And so at some point, I think that's what's going to have to happen with Washington Commanders as they really evolve as a team. But I think that they are on their way. And so now as we look at this next game coming up against the Philadelphia Eagles, my initial thoughts for this game is that the Washington Commanders absolutely have a chance. I think that with this Washington Commanders team, they have a chance against an Eagles team that, even though they've been playing very well the last couple of weeks offensively, they get off to slow starts. And I think if they get off to slow starts, we're an offense that, has put up about 29 points a game. I think that we could easily, take advantage of the Philadelphia Eagles getting off to a slow start. For whatever reason, they seem to play down to the competition, or it takes them time to really get going. Because at one point, I was looking at the Eagles versus the Cowboys, and they were struggling for a little bit. I think that there was a bad interception by Jalen Hurts. There was also a bad fumble as well, which I think led to the Cowboys cashing in on that and getting some points. So, the Eagles are going to give you some opportunities here, and it's the Washington Commanders that I think are going to have to definitely continue to do what they've been doing, and that is generate points on their drives early and often, and really putting a lot of pressure on the Eagles. Next up, I think that the Washington Commanders have a chance to really take advantage of the secondary, because I don't think that the Eagles have fixed their secondary from a year ago. I think that they still give up some big plays, and they can be tested. And we saw that with the Jaguars when they really came back and they were able to put up points in a hurry against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. And so I think that the Commanders have an opportunity there. And so with the connection that we've saw over the last couple of weeks and really throughout this season with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, I expect that to continue. Noah Brown had some chances to make some good plays as well. I think there should have been an interference call that did not get called in this game that perhaps would have changed the favor of this game too on Sunday. But Noah Brown's going to have his opportunities to make some plays out there. And Zach Ertz, who used to play for the Eagles, I'd have to think that he is going to want to have a big game in this one too as well. And so I think that there's going to be some opportunities for our wide receivers, tight ends, and some of our backs like Austin Eckler to get loose in the secondary. So that is going to be key number 2 going into this game. And so I think that is one of the things that I think the Commanders can take advantage of. And lastly, I just think that because we're talking about this team growing, this team seems to respond well off of losses, and they've responded well after they got beat by the Bucs. And I want to see what their response is going to be after a tough game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm really betting on the Commanders responding well, and I think that is probably something that we can really kind of look at that and say, hey, this is attached to this coaching staff, really this front office. It's totally changed the whole identity of the team. And so I think that the Washington Commanders are going to come back, and they're going to come back very well. We'll see what happens if they get Brian Robinson Jr. back. We'll be talking about the injury report and things like that as we get ready to go into this short turnaround week against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about the Washington Commanders losing to the Steelers, and what are the keys going into the Philadelphia Eagles. This is Rico. This is Washington Commanders Insider, where we talk about the Washington Commanders daily. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.